On the breakfast, the House of Representatives Committee on Finance summoned the Managing Director of Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, Sule Abdulaziz, over the controversial Azure Power Plant agreement. Also on the breakfast, major oil benchmark bullish as Saudi Arabia warns of OPEC output cut. What does this mean for the Nigerian economy? And don't forget, we'll also be looking through today's newspapers and analyzing the biggest stories of the day. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, and thank you for joining us this day on The Breakfast. It's good to be back on your screen. I am Messi Boko. As always, we start off our conversation with what's making the rounds in different spaces across different quarters. We call it top trending. And top trending this morning is the hashtag Shatima Challenge, Kashima Shatima. If you remember vividly, following the 62nd conference of the NBA, the outfit of Kashima Shatima, the vice presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, that's the APC, and former governor of Borno State, who represented Bola Tinubu, the APC presidential candidate, because that also got a lot of tongues wagging at the annual conference that was held in Eko, Atlantic City. Like I mentioned earlier on, 2022 Nigerian Bar Association 62nd conference inspired the viral challenge on social media. Apparently, it came, on the heel that you had the likes of, Reno, Omokri, who actually shook the table. No, so I'm going to say shook the table because he's a table shaker. So, I mean, he was one of the first persons who pointed to the fact that how can you wear a pair of sneakers and an outfit, But really, I have to tell you that, it's not that difficult. But what really happened is that he turned up for that conference with a suit and a tie and a pair of sneakers. You can see that on the screen already. And he actually generated a wave of mixed reaction on social media, where you have several users faulting his fashion sense, arguing that he should not have worn sneakers to an official, occasion and all of that. And a lot of persons said, hey, he's not even used to the fact that he has to wear a suit. How many times have you seen, the former governor of Borno State wearing a suit? Or even, he probably wears his agbada. But really, does that really matter? It's the question that we're asking. And so I think that, as a way of defense, as a way of not making him feel bad. Because sometimes I think that we even forget the fact that we're humans. Before Shatima, or he's a governor from he's a presidential aspirant, and we're talking about vice presidential aspirant right now. He's a human being. I mean, just imagine how you would feel. It feels like, some sort of bullying. And then people are saying, oh, how can you wear sneakers and all of that? But I tell you, in several professions, including this profession, you can't even imagine what I'm wearing underneath me now. But I'm seated here. It's possible that, I could just have a pair of sneakers and maybe have a joggers on, really. I'm telling you for a fact. But the likes of Festus Keyamo also took to Twitter. And I think that that's where the challenge actually happened. He initiated, that kind of outfit that was used. I mean, the outfit where you had the former Borno State governor wearing. So he initiated that and said, hey, I think that in the wake of this reaction, he said, paraphrasing, maybe it has become not important that Nigerians are paying attention to buttons and how buttons are being put out. But like I rightly mentioned, I just think that the Shatima challenge is to justify, the outfit or the fashion sense. I mentioned earlier on, he's the Minister of State for Labor and Employment. And of course, he decided to mimic the outfit that you had Kashima appearing during the 62nd conference of the NBA. And in his tweet, okay, so verbatim now, he says, they think the issue of Nigerians are 3 buttons, a pair of sneakers, and a long tie. Let's help them. with the real issue, and that's what he wrote. And apart from that, you've also seen several memes going on and going through over time. So I've seen a lot of people replicating that particular instance. But like I'm saying, does it really matter? I mean, who really cares? But it's not also, it's also important that we can't strike out the fact that, hey, you should also, be on top of your game every other time, especially when you're a public figure. But it's a fashion style. The big question I would ask is, if you had some influencers, I mean, big artists in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria, for instance, I like to say, let's even imagine that Burna Boy actually wore that. Would it be a big issue? Or you have the likes of Davido, Wizkid, or you also have, what's it called again? Don Jazzy, or several other artists in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria, Kanye West. Would we say that it's out of fashion? Me probably might be just be making a fashion statement, but that's it on that one. Another issue on the top trending this morning is that you have a very learned, although he's not a legal practitioner, but he's very learned because he is into a literature. I remember also reading some of his books way back then. Professor Wole Soyinka questioning Nigeria or the federal government. But really, it's more of a rhetoric question. You know, the kind of question where you put out, you don't expect an immediate answer, or you don't even expect an answer, but it just allows the people to ponder and wonder. And so he actually wondered why the government was yet to ban the cattle group called the Meeti Allah, while it had proscribed the indigenous people of Biafra as a group. First of all, this person's a group of persons who are saying, hey, we do not want to become part of the entity called Nigeria. And so a group seeking the cessation of the Southeast from the country or the entity called Nigeria. And he said that we must always put the country's history in perspective to understand security challenges. Apparently, if you remember the Civil War and understand the dynamics, and prior to this time, you also remember a lot of things that had happened, the about women riots and what have you, and even the concern, the fact that a certain region, which is the South, have constantly said that they've been marginalized in the political process of the country. According to him, my temperament does not accept that anyone should chase me out of my God-given earth. So it's a temperamental thing as well. That's what Wole Soyinka is quoted to say. The idea that you must unleash terror on me because you want my little patch of territory or you want my soul, that is, you want me to subjugate me. You want me to turn into a slave. Well, I would sort that first. Then I will make my mind up whether to leave. So each outrage, unfortunately, has the opposite effect, whether the outrage is taking place in Benue, Kaduna, or taking place in Owo, or whether it's taking place right here in Ogun State, the border, where we've been subjected to this lunacy and mentality where you just have to be a subject and accept anything that comes your way, which some minority people hold. And I find it very difficult to accept to be chased out. I mean, that he's very poetic. He's actually, giving into a lot of literature. And I think that in this thought that he expressed himself where he had the forum on air, he talked about it. He's expressed himself on air and off air. You will just really see his profession playing, in terms of trying to describe the situation. He's talked about history. He mentioned history, the purpose of history. And let's also look at our curriculum. It brings us back. What's going on with history? Are we really, really having, history being taught in our schools, from primary, the secondary schools, even up to university level, even the nursery schools? I mean, it's really bad for us to have one or two lines about our history. But if you look at history, a lot has really has actually happened in our country, and it's triggered a lot of issues. Some of the issues that we're going through now, if you go back lane of history, then you remember what exactly has triggered the situation that we're faced with. But that's what that's the situation, and that's the thought or the position of Wole Soyinka. He's asking, why would the government not prescribe this group of persons, the Meeti Allah, and, the government is very swift to have prescribed, IPOP. Persons who have said, we do not want to become an entity. Do they have a right? I mean, do they have a right? Is it okay for anyone to wake up and say, hey, I don't want to become part of this entity called Nigeria? Is it also okay for you to say, hey, I don't want to become a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? It's your constitutional right. It therefore means that as a human being, we're a free being and we have a right, to choose whatever it is that we want and we desire. And over time, the political system has also encouraged all of that. But that's it on, prescribing IPOP and also not having the Métis Allah. The legal processes delaying Nigerians' evacuation from the UAE, the federal government has given her thoughts on the situation. If you remember, there was a video that made the rounds and it was quite embarrassing. But the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has given some reason why it's taking time in evacuating over 300 stranded Nigerians in the United Arab Emirates. It feels like there's a lot that's going on with the Emirates. First of all, there's a suspension of, flights to and from the Emirate. According to the ministry and the ministry spokesperson, the attention of the federal government of Nigeria has been drawn to news making the rounds on social media that the Nigerian mission in the UAE has abandoned some stranded Nigerians in the country, and it's making it difficult for them to return home. According to the government, the allegation is completely untrue and misleading, as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Nigerian mission have been working assiduously with the UAE authorities to assist over 300 Nigerians stranded in the country for various reasons, ranging from overstay, loss of passport, and lack of documentation, especially in the case of infant, to pending cases with the Emirate Police. Well, the federal government also explained that the process of evacuating the stranded Nigerians for various reasons had to be finalized with the relevant Emirate authorities before repatriation. So fingers across. First of all, it's very commendable. I mean, it's contrary, to the reactions that we have over time where we say the government is really slow and not very swift when it has to do with, Nigerians who are going through different challenges in other parts of the world. But it's commendable, and we wish that, the efforts of the government would be successful, and everyone who needs to be returned or who needs to get back home, will be evacuated and get here in one piece. And that's it. Well, that's the size of our top trending this morning. When we return, it will be time for us to go through the front pages of the national dailies. We call it Off the Press. Please stay with us.